High rollers have delivered fat profits to the casinos of Macau.
Last year, VIP buy and rolling chip volume, we call it, was over $1 trillion.
They've also made them a target for organised crime.
Organised crime sees casinos as a major source of funds.
I think the amount of money that was being laundered from China was staggering.
Can Australia tap the high roller market, but keep the criminals out?
That's easier, much easier said than done.
Turning bad money into good. Welcome to Four Corners. As China's story of miraculous growth has dazzled the world, so has the mind-boggling wealth from some of its citizens pouring into the world's casinos, but nowhere more than the gambling mecca of Macau, the former Portuguese colony now back under the Chinese government umbrella. Last year, it generated $45 billion in gambling revenue. China's new breed of high rollers who can bet up to $1 million on a single hand of cards now account for 2/3 of revenue at Macau's casinos. Australian casino operator James Packer has a partnership in 2 casinos there, and his latest high-stakes venture in Sydney's glamorous new Barangaroo Harbour precinct will be pitched exclusively at VIP high rollers. In Macau, there's evidence that Chinese organised crime gangs are heavily involved in organising the flow of high rollers into casinos. A recent US congressional report highlighted one estimate that a stunning $202 billion of, quote, ill-gotten funds are channelled through Macau each year. How big is the risk that organised crime will infiltrate Australian casinos as they open up more to the high roller trade? This investigation from Linton Besser.
A fortune rides on the turn of these cards. At risk are tens of thousands of dollars. And this potent addiction is pouring billions of dollars into casinos around the world.
The minimum bet is 100,000 Hong Kong, which is 14 to 15,000 Australian. That's minimum bet per bet, every bet, each bet. And to give you an idea of the sort of way the betting goes, in 45 minutes, on one occasion he was up 13 million, 10 minutes later he was down 6 million.
The private VIP salons of the Chinese gambling mecca of Macau have been capturing more of this staggering windfall than anywhere else in the world. And now one major casino operator wants to build a new Australian casino focused on China's high rollers.
I think that this is a great idea. This will be great for Sydney. And there is no one anywhere who's going to try harder than our company to build something special.
But tonight on Four Corners, we ask just who are these high rollers? Who are the handlers passing out the chips? And despite all the regulations, are VIP rooms exposing casino operators like James Packer to organised crime?
Organised crime sees casinos as a major source of funds, making money, of laundering money, loan sharking, whatever it is, and sensible governments who act as they should will do everything they can to keep them out and to control that. And if you don't do that, I think that you put everyone in your community at risk.
Perched on China's coast near Hong Kong, the former Portuguese colony of Macau has become Asia's gambling haven. Last year, its casino strip brought in 7 times as much revenue as Las Vegas in America. About 70% of the money comes from high rollers, mostly from China. Over the past decade, this strip has become a paradise for those casino tycoons who could obtain a licence. James Packer's joint venture Melco Crown is one of them, where the rivers of money just keep on flowing.
It's a fantastically huge market. Last year, VIP buy-in, rolling chip volume, we call it, was over $1 trillion. Melco Crown probably did 120 billion of that. These are very, very large numbers. Macau is unique. The Chinese player that plays in Macau is quite willing to buy in 800,000 or $1 million at a go. This is a VIP player. They are hardwired to play.
The man who established Macau as a VIP gambling mecca is Stanley Ho.
I could not believe that Macau could not do better.
Stanley Ho is an interesting character. I guess in Australian parlance, he might be regarded as a colourful racetrack identity, except we're not talking about racetracks, we're talking about casinos.
Ho has been a key figure in helping James Packer secure his place in Macau. Ho grew powerful, navigating his way through a turbulent world of organised crime. While never named as a triad member himself, one of his early backers in Macau was Yip Hon, who was named by the CIA in the 1990s as a triad figure and heroin trafficker. In 1988, Ho was named as a triad associate by the US Justice Department, and 2 years later, Canadian authorities reportedly placed him on a roster of organised crime figures.
I don't think anyone's ever suggested that Stanley Ho is a criminal. He's a businessman, but he's done business with people in organised crime.
In Macau, Ho's empire flourished. And when China took back Macau in 1999 and opened its casino market to foreign investment 3 years later, James Packer saw an opportunity. In 2004, his company PBL negotiated with a business run by Stanley Ho and his son Lawrence to set up a joint venture. Initially, the Ho company was called Melco International Development.
Macau Electric Company, Melco, owned real estate. It did own the Jumbo floating restaurant here in Hong Kong, had a number of non-gaming assets. It was considered to be a very sleepy holding company, really.
And it was a company controlled by Stanley Ho.
It was a company controlled by Stanley Ho, absolutely.
The Packer company PBL poured $163 million into its joint venture with a company run by Stanley Ho and his son Lawrence, which is now known as Melco Crown Entertainment. Investors were told it was good value for money because of the invaluable established business reputation and connection possessed by Dr. Stanley Ho and Mr. Lawrence Ho. But probity investigations by the Victorian Casino Authority coincided with major changes to the plan. Stanley Ho resigned as chairman and was replaced by his 29-year-old son, Lawrence, who had worked under him since 2001.
Stanley probably was aware that he was being seen as being unsuitable in the eyes of some of these overseas regulators because of his, the history of Macau, the connections between Stanley and the junket system. And so by disassociating himself with Melco again, he was putting that company in a much better position to get a license.
Half a world away in Atlantic City in the United States, there were some difficult questions being asked about doing business with the Ho family. MGM owned a major casino on the Atlantic City Strip. It wanted a Macau license by partnering with Stanley Ho's daughter, Pansy Ho. This triggered a probity investigation by local regulators to examine whether Stanley Ho would exercise undue influence over the joint venture. The 4-year investigation was painstaking. And it was not the first time that Ho's children had come under scrutiny from casino regulators. Sometimes they were approved and other times not.
It's true that some of Stanley Ho's children have applied for licences and they've been refused.
Sandy Boucher is a former Royal Hong Kong police detective, now in the private sector. He's worked on several casino regulator investigations that probe Macau and its underbelly.
I think the primary issue that they would have been dealing with is who is their father. In other words, they would have been seen as fronts in those days as a way to get around the regulatory issues that Stanley Ho himself clearly had.
In 2010, New Jersey regulators found Pansy Ho's associations with organised crime posed too great a risk. Authorities here ordered MGM to either sever its relationship with Stanley Ho's daughter or to leave New Jersey altogether. It chose the latter, and it promised to divest its interest in this Atlantic City mega casino.
This is where...
Late last week, after Pansy Ho had removed herself from day-to-day management of the venture, New Jersey allowed MGM back into Atlantic City. Back in 2008, the Victorian gambling regulator found Lawrence Ho was not under the ongoing influence of his father. It described its investigation as rigorous, but unlike in New Jersey, the details of the Victorian investigation were never made public.
I think we have a wonderful partner in, Mr. James Packer and Crown Limited.
3, 2, 1.
The James Packer Lawrence Ho joint venture opened its first major Macau casino in 2007, which is now named Altira. Its second opened with a bang in 2009, the billion-dollar City of Dreams resort.
Congratulations, grand opening of City of Dreams.
But initially, the Melco Crown business was losing money. So, in a major shake-up, the company, which is run day-to-day by Lawrence Ho, changed its focus and moved to cater heavily to China's high rollers. China's high rollers are the new rich. Some have been successful in business, but some have embezzled state money or accepted bribes.
I think it's very likely that significant amounts of the money that are being played in the casinos in Macau have come from illegitimate sources in China.
In Macau, the key to these big spenders are companies called junkets. These companies and their agents locate VIPs, organise their transport and, crucially, stump up the credit for them to play. Junkets operate within private VIP rooms in most of Macau's casinos, including those owned by Melco Crown. They take a share of the profits and they collect on the debts.
The high roller shows up, the junket operator gives them $100,000 in what are called dead chips, a few at a time, and the player bets with those. If the player loses, then he needs to get more dead chips. If the player wins, he gets paid off in real chips. And it's a way for the junket operator to keep track of it. The advantage for the casinos is they don't have to be involved in the collection of gambling debts.
Gambling law expert Nelson Rose says the fact that gambling debts cannot be enforced via the courts in China creates opportunities for organised crime.
If the junket operator comes upon somebody who doesn't have the money or refuses to pay for whatever reason, then they can't go to court. And certainly the stories are that they then they turn to organized crime to enforce the gambling debt using violence and threats of violence.
Chinese crime gangs, also known as triads, have always had a strong presence in Macau's junkets.
The way that the triads are involved in the gaming industry in Asia, there's 2 or 3 ways. The first way is these junket tours. So a junket is in theory, a company or a partnership, and their job is to find high-rolling gamblers and bring them to the casino. And then the second part of where you get organised crime involvement is with the VIP rooms.
Experts say Western casinos in Macau try to run a clean operation, but it's their reliance on junkets that raises serious concern.
Is it possible for a major Western casino to be successful in Macau and not in some way be doing business with organised crime figures?
I don't think so. You have to be mixed up with them because only they can bring the top gamblers from mainland China. So having the good connections with those high rollers, good connection with some officials that do have some money to play in Macau is a key for the success. And you only have this kind of information if you are related in some way, directly or indirectly to the triads.
In the 1990s, the triads became far richer and more powerful thanks to their VIP gambling business. And that fueled a violent turf war which erupted on the streets of Macau. On the one hand, Broken Tooth Koi from the 14K Triad, who, with extraordinary bravado, financed a feature film about his exploits. On the other, a rival 14K leader, Ng Man Sum.
Just prior to the Portuguese handover, there was a disturbance in the force. I think that's probably the best description, where elements of the 14K Triad Society split and went for each other very, very viciously.
With the handover back to China, the triads were told to clean up their act. Many junkets put on a suit and tie, some even listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Hong Wing Kwon is a Macau lawyer who represents several junket agents.
黑社會都係講求一個經濟利益。如果佢經營賭廳能夠可以帶到佢嘅利潤嘅話，相信佢哋嘅或者活動嘅方式已經係一個合法咗嘅一個方式存在咗喺澳門，而唔係話我哋所講嘅黑社會。因為黑社會始終都係佢係組織嚟係要從事一啲犯罪嘅行為，但係佢可以透過澳門一個容許賭博嘅情況嘅一個合法化。
There has been a sort of metamorphosis of the whole business. As the pie has expanded, it has professionalized the persons involved with it. There's been a sort of a gentrification of many of the junkets. But, you know, this is not Mother Teresa and her sister.
One of those listed on the public exchange is Amax, a company called in to rescue James Packer's Macau business in its early days. The results were spectacular. Melco Crown's share of VIP play went through the roof. But the deal raised eyebrows. Amax was heavily associated with Ng Man Sum, the notorious triad figure who had battled it out with Broken Tooth Koi in the 1990s. While Broken Tooth was jailed for 14 years, Ng Man Sum became a leading force in the new corporate Macau.
Man Sum is a triad member, and in the days that I was in the Narcotics Bureau, to give you an example, then he would have been someone who was widely known to be involved in the highest levels of organised crime.
Amax tapped into a pipeline of VIP players and paid above-market rates to the agents bringing them in.
A relationship was developed between Amax and Melco Crown to try and to drive the VIP segment within the Altera property. At the time, I think it was called Crown. And I think the early stages of that relationship were very successful.
But not all of the revenues flowing into Melco Crown and its rivals are from VIPs. A good portion comes from the thousands of ordinary punters playing on the main gambling floor. They stream over the border every day. Even here, criminals find opportunity. It's in the currency restrictions that prevent players from bringing more than $3,000 a day over the border from China.
So how do you get your money from the mainland to Macau? A lot of people are now doing scams, bank fraud in effect, to get that money out. And I have seen this, and the most recently saw it, in fact, May this year, where I just stood there and watched as a person walks in, is sitting there in a jewelry store that is literally on the floor of a casino, and they have a credit card or a debit card, and they're supposedly buying something like a watch, only there's no watch involved. Instead, there is a cash counting machine next to the credit card machine.
There has been a recent crackdown on underground banking in Macau and elsewhere. In July, Taiwan authorities laid criminal charges against Melco Crown's local subsidiary. It has been accused of, but denies, illegally channeling more than $180 million into Macau in just 3.5 years. Taipei has charged the company and its local employees with banking offences and frozen more than $100 million. Lawyer Hong Weng-Kwon says the allegations in Taiwan are consistent with what he has seen in Macau.
喺澳門係類似一個地下錢莊嘅形式，只係佢將啲錢喺國內透過地下錢莊匯到澳門賭廳嗰邊，再由賭廳出籌碼俾個賭客去賭。
The big bucks are in the VIP rooms. In those rooms in the City of Dreams, in just 3 months this year, more than $20 billion was wagered. Small wonder that Macau has been labelled one of the world's most notorious money launderers. This man works in Hong Kong's criminal justice system and has seen firsthand the volumes of money washing through the Macau casinos. He didn't want to be identified.
The amount of money that goes through those casinos is just breathtaking, and it's got to come from somewhere. And money on that scale is normally not money that someone can afford to lose. Money that's being diverted into the casinos in Macau, which should have been used for urban projects in China, results in detrimental life effects on vast swaths of the population in China.
Melco itself has repeatedly warned investors that despite its safeguards, its casinos may still be exploited for money laundering purposes, and that we cannot assure you that the junket operators with whom we are associated will always maintain the high standards that we require. Like many in the industry, Charlie Choi has a different view. He is a major investor in Macau junkets, with a business naming and shaming debtors online. Choi claims the triads have disappeared from Macau.
可以咁講，澳門又回歸咗之後呢，基本上冇乜嘢社團啊或者黑社會嘅啦。大家都好守規矩，因為其實大家都好忙，因為依家個博彩業呢咁繁榮，大家都主要係掛住揾錢，諗辦法去揾錢。
But tonight, Four Corners can reveal that several junket operators in Melco Crown's Macau casinos have been connected to organised crime. Chan Meng Kam is a colourful figure whose businesses include jewellery and gambling interests. He recently turned to politics. He now sits in the Macau Parliament. In 2010, the US consulate in Hong Kong wrote a classified cable to the Secretary of State about Chan Man-Kam's political rise. It said, "We have yet to meet anyone who does not believe Chan is linked to the triads." One of Chan's parliamentary colleagues is the pro-reform member, Jose Coutinho.
In 2010, the United States diplomatic cables that were leaked, they described Chan Man-Kam as an associate of triads.
Not surprised again, because things that happened before the handover, when he was not related so much and so deep with politics, such as he is now, because he is one of the most powerful men in Macau.
Two of Chan's early corporate partners were arrested and convicted of triad-related crimes alongside 14K boss Broken Tooth Khoi. Chan's business went on to greater things, including a VIP gaming agreement with Melco Crown. But to find this, you'd need to read the fine print, all the way to page 36 of an obscure Melco Crown banking agreement. Chan Man-Kam declined our request for an interview.
He's not the only one. We have in the Leicester Assembly many more related to the VIP rooms, and seems that life goes on.
Another junket that has worked in at least one of Melco Crown's Macau casinos is the Manpu Gaming Promotion Company. One of its principals is Lai Pak Leng. In February last year, Lai's father was identified during a Canadian immigration hearing as a leader of the Shui Fong triad. Lai Tong Sang's associates had played a key role in Macau's bloody street wars of the 1990s. In 1997, soon after he arrived in Vancouver, his home was peppered with bullets. The price on his head was 1 million Hong Kong dollars.
I don't know anything about his son, but knowing who Lai Tong Sang is, he's been thrown out of Canada, right? He arrived in Canada and there was a drive-by shooting of this massive house that he'd built. He's hardcore criminal.
There are others too. The mega VIP business Neptune has included the Ocean Star Junket, which is operated in Packer's huge City of Dreams resort. Neptune is highly controversial because one of its backers is Chung Chi Tai. Though he was never charged, he was named as recently as 2011 in the Hong Kong High Court as a triad boss and mastermind in a murder conspiracy. Charlie Choi is one of Chung Chi Tai's fellow investors in the Neptune VIP business.
阿張生喺澳門做賭場、做貴賓廳咁多年，都係非常之守法律，亦都係非常之一個非常之守信用嘅商人嚟嘅咁樣啊咁樣。其實依家佢哋都好多賭場都有合作，所以如果你係黑社會，冇人會做貴賓廳啊咁樣去做生意。
廣東集團為您呈現
Neptune holds poker tournaments at City of Dreams.
特別加開25萬熱身賽，陣容更鼎盛。
And even more troubling, it's bringing high rollers to Echo's Star Casino in Sydney. And Choi says they're also travelling to Crown's resorts in Perth and Melbourne.
有啲客過去會間唔中，我哋都會喺嗰邊搞啲活動啊，或者澳洲嗰邊嘅賭場啊、墨爾本啊、珀斯佢哋有啲賭場有啲活動，都會邀請海王嘅 VIP 過去咁樣嘅啊。
Sun City is one of the most powerful VIP junkets in Macau, and it too has a contract with the James Packer Lawrence Ho joint venture, running an exclusive VIP room at Melco's City of Dreams.
非凡想像引發無限可能，太陽城集團。
Four Corners has been shown a confidential intelligence report claiming the ultimate beneficiary of the business is Charles Hung Wah Kung. Charles Hung is a household name in Hong Kong. because he's a high-profile movie star and producer. But in America, he became notorious after the Senate named him in 1992 as a leader of the powerful Sun Yee-on triad. It's an allegation he has always strenuously denied.
Well, the Heung family in law enforcement circles are recognised as the founders and controllers of the Sun Yee-on, the largest and most powerful triad organisation in the world. Heung Wah-keung, by different people's estimations, was or is the dragon head.
Tonight, Four Corners can reveal Sun City is not just running some of Melco Crown's VIP rooms in Macau. It's bringing Chinese high rollers to James Packer's Crown casinos in Australia.
多元娛樂亞洲之最，太陽城集團。
Alvin Louis is a senior executive with the Sun City Group.
We just started a junket room in Crown in Melbourne.
And has it been successful?
Yeah, it's kind of developing because more and more our clients, our customer friends, they would like to visit Australia more than like they have been. So yeah, we think the Melbourne operation is a good opportunity.
Midway through last year, the Sun City Group bought one of Australia's most prestigious thoroughbred studs, Eliza Park.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's please toast Eliza Park International.
Lavishly launched at Crown Casino in Melbourne, Sun City's heavyweights were present, including Alvin Chow, one of the most influential men in Asian gaming. It was a major event, attended by the cream of Australian racing.
For the racing industry in Australia, this investment of Sun International is just fantastic. For Eliza Park, it's just going to explode.
Alvin Louis does not manage the company's junket business, and he says he's never heard of Charles Heung Wah-keung.
Yeah, Heung Wah-keung, no, I've never heard about it.
But he agrees junkets had a bad reputation.
Yeah, I can say that, like, when I was young, I look at news, like what we heard about Macau is quite kind of chaos sometimes. But now I see, like, as I understand, like, most of the operation, especially the casinos or the big junkets, they operate in, like, a very business sense.
So it's cleaned up?
Yeah, I would say that. I would say that.
Others disagree. Trainers and jockeys in Hong Kong have been briefed on Sun City's alleged criminal connections. Louis says he knows nothing of this. A few months ago, the head of security for the Hong Kong Jockey Club, Martin Perbrick, gave a confidential presentation to police from across Australia at a seminar organised by the Victorian Police. The former Hong Kong detective alerted those present to Macau's junkets and their links to organised crime. And he gave a particular warning about some individuals associated with Sun City. Are followers of Won Kwok Koi, Macau 14K triad, imprisoned in 1998 for 14 years. Now a former executive of Melco Crown is speaking out, though he can't be identified. He says the company didn't want to ask too many questions about who was bringing in its VIPs.
How extensive is discussion of precisely who is behind the junkets in Melco's properties?
They don't want to know about the links to organised crime. And I have known since the first month I started that a number of the junkets are triads. This is known by everyone, every supervisor, every pit manager, every shift manager. They say, that's the front person, but the owner's this guy.
In a statement, Crown said it had been extensively investigated by regulators around the world and in all cases has been found to be suitable by gaming regulators. Crown said its junkets are independent contractors who do not have any say in the operation of Crown's casinos, and that the junkets flying to Australia are carefully scrutinised. The company's statement also said that its joint venture casinos in Macau only deal with licensed junket operators, which raises a question as to why several unlicensed VIP gaming promoters have used addresses linked to Melco Crown properties, including Kwok K Junket Promoter, whose address is in Crown Towers, and Lion City International Gaming Promoter, whose address is at the City of Dreams. Crown said both of these examples were simply innocent mistakes. Melco Crown's former executive says there are many loopholes in Macau's regulations which are exploited.
Money is meant to be tracked, but the whole of Macau is a big open sewer in that respect.
Jose Coutinho agrees the gambling regulator in Macau, known as the DICJ, is ineffective.
As for the casino VIP rooms, the DICJ does not have a full control on how they operate and what's going on, and they seems not to care about that because it's very complicated, a lot of dark sides, loopholes.
Is there extensive due diligence done by Melco beyond what the Macau authorities do?
Not that I know of. If they did their due diligence, they would put themselves out of business in Macau. Clearly, I would say that if a junket is big enough, they would get play in Altira or City of Dreams, irrespective of background.
James Packer's Australian company is building a casino dedicated to this VIP market. But it's not in Macau, it's in Sydney. Macau's gambling experts say that for Packer's Sydney venture to succeed, he will have to rely on junkets.
其他外國嘅賭場公司，如果真係要仿效澳門或者冇將呢個優勢帶俾中國人，我相信佢要繼續經營落去會相當困難。
But there are fears this focus on VIPs and the junkets bringing them here will open the door to more organised crime in Australia. Steve Vickers says local regulators should be careful.
Where possible, try and exclude the core triad-connected junket operators. And that's easier, much easier said than done, because if the casino is totally focused on upper-end VIP only, then that appeals to a certain small a certain small element, and that's difficult.
Another major crackdown on corruption by Beijing's central government is scaring away high rollers from Macau. Experts say these players are looking further afield to places like Australia, where they can gamble beyond Beijing's reach.
The current corruption crackdown in China is very real. There are all sorts of actions against all sorts of officials all over the country at the moment on a very big scale, an unprecedented scale. And I think, other than the anonymity issue, which is the ability to be able to go offshore and gamble without fear of somebody looking over your shoulder, I can't really understand the objectives of flying as far as Australia to do this.
Some regulators overseas have shown real concern about the junket industry. In Singapore, authorities have refused to allow a single Macau-based junket operator into the country because of concerns about their links to the triads.
Is it the case that Singapore is yet to licence a single Macau-based junket for operations in its casinos?
That is correct. There are no Macau-based junkets that are operating in Singapore casinos.
And why is that?
I think it's all about, in some cases, shareholders and historical associations of those shareholders in Macau, in the mainland, elsewhere. Some of them simply don't want to produce information, so we're just not sure of who they are. Often, if somebody doesn't want to produce information, we make the conclusion that that they're not good people.
I mean, they're worried about infiltration by organised crime, in short, aren't they?
Yeah, I think that's true.
Australia has not taken the same hard line as Singapore. And despite a web of state and federal regulations which check the bona fides of junket employees and their clients, police say there are limitations to these checks.
We are provided with certain information, and as a result of that, we undertake certain checks. Of course, it must be remembered that any of the information that we then rely upon as an outcome is only as good as the information that we get back from countries of origin, for example.
The casino regulator in New South Wales says it conducted a previous probity inquiry into Crown, which included business associates in Macau. However, it declined to answer specific questions about this and whether junkets were included. It also said its regulatory approach to the new VIP casino was still being developed and finalised. But police in New South Wales have told Four Corners that Macau's junkets haven't been fully investigated.
We work very closely with our colleagues in the Australian Federal Police, the Department of Immigration and Border Protection, of course, overseas agencies. So if we are called upon to undertake any investigations, we certainly would do so. Specifically, though, I'm not aware of any particular request to undertake an investigation into Macau-based junket operators.
If I were to tell you that just very recently the New South Wales regulator gave the green light to this VIP casino and there were only limited probity checks conducted into junket operations that may be associated with that casino, what would you say to that?
Really? Wow. I think that's pretty... that's scary. That sounds ridiculous to me. I can't imagine why you wouldn't want to do the background checks, given that you're talking about a widely known, in Asia, that's one of the nexus points of organised crime with gambling.
The casino proposal has attracted strong backing from the state's top politicians.
I'm incredibly proud of what we've got in Melbourne and Perth, and we're going to make it better and better. But I think we've got a chance to do something in Sydney that's very special.
And last month, the head of the state's casino watchdog told a gambling conference that the licence approval granted to Crown was the fastest yet.
We completed the probity assessment of Crown in 3 months, which probably rates as one of the fastest assessments of a casino applicant in history.
Macau's junkets continue to alarm authorities.
Those are very serious people, and the idea that the Australian government is letting people like that walk into, invest in, or have anything to do with the casino means to me that the battle sounds like it's half lost already. Organised crime is there. If that's who's dealing with your casinos in Australia, you have a problem.
In Macau, the triads run the show because they are the key to the high rollers and the rivers of money they gamble. Now the question is being asked here, what price are we willing to pay for a slice of that action?
Crown Resorts declined to be interviewed for this program. They've provided statements in response to questions which can be viewed on our website. Next week on Four Corners, we go inside the often ethically challenging world of commercial surrogacy. Until then, good night.
You can watch tonight's program again on iView or see more of our research and interviews at abc.net.au/4corners.